We go.
Good morning, Giants, and welcome to episode 16 of Wake Up with Giants Radio. Today we're talking about routines and rituals and how they help us. And we're going to jump right into our centering so that we can get going on Access Radio. So if you're watching here, thank you very much for following us. Please do go to our YouTube channel, like and subscribe there. And we're going to jump right in. We're going to start with our breathing. Breathing in and out, in and out, in and out. I show up powerfully today as a leader and a student. I show up humble and ready to move in a space of touching lives in grace and honesty. I make a difference in 100 million lives today, and I'm here just to make a difference in one. Go ahead, Samantha.
I'll say same, just trying to reach that one person that might need to hear something I have to say.
That's perfect.
Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I am practicing full presence today. So being in the moment, being in the experience, feeling the energy of it, opening my mind to the intuitions that come, that those might influence somebody that's watching or listening. So that's where I'll be today.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ryan.
I'm Ryan the Lion, and I'm here to share my talents and experiences with others so that they might be able to learn and grow, and also be able to learn from our guest today. I'm so grateful for Samantha and for all that she does, for her leadership and wisdom and inspiration, and for her support. And I know that she is powerfully showing up to make a difference in the lives of as many people as possible. So I'm grateful for that today.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. I'm going to go ahead and get us started here. We're going to play our intro first. Good afternoon and welcome to episode 16 of Wake Up with Giants Radio. Today, our topic is how do routines and rituals help us? I am Lady Luck, and I'm joined here in the studio today with special guest co-hosts Samantha, Callen, and Ryan the Lion, and Nick the Gentle Giant. So I'm going to jump right in here and talk a little bit about, I guess, the difference between routines and rituals. And you know why we have them, and how we can begin to implement them. So I want to talk about a routine first because you know, when I look at routines, I think that we interchange the word routine and habit a lot when we talk about routines. And so I actually consciously went and looked that up when I was really pondering this for myself with my kids about implementing routines and rituals. And I came to something, a definition actually, that really piqued my interest, because I know that a routine is something that we deliberately practice. We deliberately implement that thing. And what I didn't realize, and when I say that's a habit for me, and I do that as a habit for me, what I didn't realize and what didn't come to me is that a habit is actually something that we automatically do. And we actually deliberately do a routine. So a habit is something that we automatically have the urge to do that thing. We often will say we drove home out of habit, or when we were headed to the store, we drove this way out of habit. But a routine is something that we have the intention of doing. We actually put effort into it. We actually consciously think about doing it rather than unconsciously having that habit and doing something out of habit. And when it comes to setting those routines, we put a lot of effort into them. We put more effort in it than we do a habit. And these are things that give us stability. Routines give us stability. And when we look at the difference between a routine and a ritual is something that becomes even more meaningful in our life. We can put mindfulness towards it for it to become a ritual. We can apply mindfulness towards it, and we can turn a routine into a ritual, just like we can turn a habit into a routine. So they're all very intertwined. And I thought that was really interesting when I started looking into that, when I was setting routines and rituals for my own family and in my own life. What does that bring up for all of you?
Yeah, I want to add a shift to that, just a slight shift. Like a routine is a route. It's a pathway for getting something done, anything in your life. And a habit is the automation of that pathway. Whereas a ritual is more of the meaningness or the meaningfulness behind that routine, that pathway. So I think all three are important because we're designed for automation. Our bodies are designed to do that because otherwise it'd be too overwhelming. So the routine is the method for creating the automation, the habit. And then the ritual goes into the routine and tells us why that's meaningful. So it's almost like it's ritual first of why it's important. Then it goes into the pathway to create that. And then the automation. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, it does, but there's a question in that. Yeah.
No, it does to me. And I think that we can turn a routine into a habit and make it become unconscious. But I also think that there's things that we do unconsciously that we didn't actually intend to make a routine out of to begin with. So there are things that we consciously make a routine, that we consciously set that routine every day, and we can turn it into a habit by making it become unconscious. But I think there are also things in our lives that habits in our lives that become habits that we didn't intentionally set. Like,
I could see that.
You know what I mean? Like, I drive to work a specific way every day. Okay. And so that might be a routine for me. Okay, when that started, but because I drive to work in a specific way every day, I go past a specific coffee shop every day, and I create a habit of getting a coffee every day. And now I unconsciously stop at that coffee shop every day and get that coffee. It wasn't a routine that I specifically set. I didn't say to myself, I'm going to stop at this coffee shop every day and get a coffee because that's my routine. It becomes a habit that you just drive to that coffee shop and get that coffee. Right. So I think that we unconsciously set those habits as well. I don't think we always set out to make it a habit.
Yeah, that's very possible. Samantha, you'll learn to just dive in if you got something. Just because there won't be any pauses in between otherwise.
No, go for it. I'll that eventually.
I think, here's an even more of a twist on that, using the coffee analogy, right?
Yeah.
Let's say that coffee made you feel good. So it became a ritual. And so you really slowed down with it. And instead of it being habitual where it's automatic, there's no emotion, there's no sensation in it, because that's what automation does. It takes the emotion out of it. You slow down with it and it becomes a ritual, so that you still go to the same coffee shop, but you're slowing down. You're really smelling the coffee. You're really tasting it. You're really being with the experience. Where a habit is, there isn't any of that. It's just done. The action is done. There's no consciousness. There's no sensation in it. There's no emotion. It's just done. Yeah. But the routine is what leads to both of those, right? The routine is what says, I'm going to deliberately take a path, or undeliberately, right? It could be a non-deliberate action, but I'm either going to enjoy it or I'm just going to do it. And there's no emotion or anything in it.
Yeah, and I think there's a large part of the population that does that as a habit and not a ritual. Yeah. Because there's a large part of the population that doesn't put the mindfulness and the emotion into that action of drinking a coffee, right? Yeah. I could talk about this all day. When I think about a ritual, I think about things that are have that energy and that emotion there, right? Like that, and it could be spiritual and it could be not. It doesn't have to be. So when
Yeah.
I think about creating a ritual, I think of that mindfulness that goes with it. So I think of my showers have become a ritual. We've talked about my showers
Yeah,
before, right?
yeah.
I
Okay.
I do my best thinking in the shower. So for me, that's become this ritual of
You make
We've
it
talked
sound
about-
like we talk about your showers a lot.
Yeah. No, it's in a safe space, just to be clear. Like we talk about shower, but it's very, very neutral.
no, okay. Nick knows
Yes.
how to take it to the gutter so quickly,
Yes.
right? All the time. He knows how to take it there.
I do.
Um,
Well, I just want to clarify.
Yeah, I wanted to be clear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's become a ritual for me.
Yeah.
I know that when I get into the shower, it's like a meditation for me. I'm actually thinking, I'm thinking my best thoughts, and there I'm creating in the shower. It's become like a meditation for me. And the same thing with journaling. That's a ritual for me. But it's not necessarily a routine for me. When I sit and do my journaling, it's not necessarily a habit, and it's not necessarily routine. It is a ritual for me. And it's something that
Beautiful.
brings me into that energetic place.
Yeah.
And at one time in my life, when I'm struggling or when I'm trying to work through things, then I do make that a routine and attempt to turn that into a habit at that time, right? It does become a routine. And I think to myself, okay, every morning when I get up, I'm going to get up 15 minutes early and do my meditation and then make sure I do my journaling because I think I need it right now. And I turn that into a routine. But it's not necessarily always a routine for me, that journaling. It is a ritual, and it's a beautiful ritual that I sit with, and I sit with music and I go inside myself. But it's not necessarily something that I do every day as a routine.
Yeah, I like that. Samantha, what's coming up for you?
I was going to say a lot of the same, and specifically with coffee, because all the time, I usually have a cup in my hand all the time.
I almost imagined an IV walking around with that stand, in the bag full of coffee and a drip line into your arm.
Yeah. No,
Push it around.
Yeah.
I think if they had that, people would definitely be doing that for
Well,
sure.
I would sign up. Absolutely. Yeah. Just plug it in.
I feel like the beta tester over here. It's like,
Yeah.
when is this happening?
What? Needles? Coffee? Yeah, I'm totally in.
No, I'm too scared for needles, but I'll
Yeah.
give blood. But I just
Anyway, I took your thought. Yeah, go ahead. Keep going.
but yeah, that is something like Melissa said. It's become almost like a ritual for me in the mornings. I know I've discussed with you some stuff like my past, not say issues, but with motherhood specifically, and happy Mother's Day to all those out there. But specifically after children, that was kind of like my finding your footing. And now I'm trying to get into things, business minded, self-growth, all just progress in general.
Yeah.
And to me, that's been something I've started in the morning. I would get up about at least a half an hour, if not earlier than my kids, and make coffee. And it was like, okay, just to kind of wake up and just, get the gears moving, so to speak. And to me, that's become like a ritual because I try and take in like the senses of it, the hearing the coffee going, the smell of the coffee, the taste, it's warm, just picking up all the senses of everything. So it's not just like a habitual, like, okay, it's morning, I'm going to make a cup of coffee. It's everything involved in doing that and having that time that mimics yourself. And
Wow. Yeah. You know what comes up for me is I think about difficult emotions, right? And how experiencing a difficult emotion could be a ritual if people would slow down with it. And in becoming a ritual of really honoring and feeling that difficult emotion could really help them move past it. Because what we do is we go into auto mode and we go into our thinking or our adrenals and all this chemical reaction, but we don't really slow down with it. So it's almost a habit. You could even say in some sense, it's an addiction, right? Because an addiction is kind of that numbing that becomes a habit. And then we're unconscious to it. And even if it harms us, we still do it. But to really turn it into a ritual, I like the direction this is going, is to turn every situation as much as you can into a mindful ritual. If that's making coffee, to really be with making coffee and smelling it and hearing it and seeing it, tasting it, right? To be with the difficult emotion and be in the ritual of being with that emotion, or in the creation of your life. It's slowing down so that you're fully in the experience of it, whatever it is.
I love that. And how many of us step out of the ritual of that, of grief, of honestly, we were just talking about this last week. I was talking about it on Matt Chat about making ourselves busy and
Yeah.
and not feeling those emotions, making yourself so busy that you're not sitting in those emotions. So I was guilty of it myself. I did not move into the ritual of feeling that, of feeling the grief and feeling loneliness. I masked it. So how many of us actually move out of that? And we all do it, and we could all point the finger at ourselves. We all do it. We all step out of the ritual of that because it's the feeling is uncomfortable. When the feeling's happy, we step into the emotion of it all we want, right? We into the ritual of it because it's happy and it feels good. But as soon as it doesn't feel good, we all step away from it.
You know what I find interesting is I've experienced pain. I know you as mothers have experienced pain, right? As giving birth to children. I can't imagine that feels good. But that intensity, that experience, you're so present with it that it's just, you forget the pain of it, and you really come present with the emotion of having that child there. I remember when I was in the room when my wife at the time was giving birth, I didn't have that full experience of the pain and everything that she went through for that child to be here. But I remember being so present, and in every way is like seeing I saw all of it, right? It's like, you can't unsee it, but there's something about it that's it becomes sacred in a way. And where I was going with that is we feel pain in our life that could be intense, that could be incredibly enjoyable. And then when we feel somewhat of suffering like depression or anxiety, we avoid it and we numb from it. And it's not anywhere near as intense as a physical pain that you might experience in your body, yet we avoid it because it's kind of this persistent ongoing thing. And what I feel is that if you can really turn it into a ritual of when pain comes up or suffering comes up, when you sit with it and you fully experience it, it allows you to recognize that, wow, I can actually handle a lot more than I thought. I don't know what comes up as you hear that.
It is for me, like I said, there's been some things, I think I've even discussed with you, and it's like, it's one of those where I don't know how to say eloquently describe it. But it's to acknowledge that you're having that emotion. Sorry, I feel like everyone else, my allergies are crazy.
You're okay.
But it's like, if you can, as they say, like lean into it, you're able to process it, I think, a little bit better, because even just mind shift and your mindset, you're like, you just, you have that like visceral, I don't want to call it like a PTSD, but it is like a literal, like you shrink a little, you're like, oh, those thoughts, no, avoid. It's like red flags, are going off, and you try to step back from it. But like you said, I think before, it's like, it's only going to magnify that because you keep not, coming to terms with it. Once you accept that emotion's there, that feeling's there, you can kind of process through and work through it. It's a lot easier. And then if it comes up again, it's a little less intense.
Yeah, the intensity changes, right? Yeah.
Hey, so thinking about this is a little different way to view this, but I watch a lot of people that they'll automate their day as far as like their habits. So it's, I wake up at 6, I do this at 7, I do this at 8, I do this at 9. I watch them go to lunch, go to the bathroom at the same time, go to, take their breaks at the same time. Everything's the same. Then when it doesn't turn out the way that it's supposed to, that habit of, the routine and the habitualness of it. Is that a word? You're welcome,
actually, everyone. You did really well there.
But thank you. I am still learning English. But
it's a little better than therapizing. So
right? Therapizing. Yeah, we made that up too. Where you did. I adopted it. But your habits and your routines can be damaging, because if something comes in from left field and all of a sudden you get I don't know, there's road construction on your way to work and you didn't leave early enough, and all of a sudden you just mental breakdown. And then somebody comes in and messes up your lunch schedule, and then you could see the snowball effect and the anxiety and the depression and the all the different things that can come in. It almost creates like the rigidity around some routines and habits can be damaging. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like the rigidity, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I love that you said that. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Ryan.
How do we? Because I watched that. I kind of am a weirdo. I like my weirdoness.
Yeah,
My
I would
weirdo-
agree.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and so yeah, that I'm a weirdo and that I
Yeah.
like my weirdoness.
Yep.
I will consciously take a different route to work just because I'm like, I took that one the other day, and I don't want to be one of those weirdos that takes the same path every single day. But then in the same right, I'm one of those weirdos, right, that does something different just because I consciously think that way. Or sometimes I'll just not do something that like I planned on doing. I'll be like, nah, I'm going to do something different.
Is it
Maybe the spontaneous?
Yeah, making it spontaneous?
And it's okay. I don't know that there's a right or wrong there, but
Mhm.
it sometimes it opens me up for the ability to, if something comes along and knocks me off course a little bit, I'm more prepared. I can maneuver because it's something different, and I'm used to something different. Does that make sense?
That makes,
Yeah.
I'm trying to talk about.
I hear
Yeah.
the rigidity, right? That when something is rigid, it breaks. And if there's some flexibility in it, then it'll bend, right? And so when somebody has habits that when they get out of routine, they break down and they struggle because it's so out of character for them. And it's not that it's out of character, it's just so unconscious for them to do it a certain way that when they have to be conscious again, there's suffering.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, that suffering is actually, it really could be beneficial for you if you would just awaken to that. You could actually shift some things. I mean, imagine one of the challenges I have in Stretch Revolution is to turn your shirt inside out and wear it that way all day, right?
Yeah, those are the things I was kind of thinking too, Nick, because that's stuff I'll do, like taking the wrong way to work, not wearing. I wear a hat a lot, and Nick had taught me in that Stretch Revolution, like show up with a different hair. I can't really show up with a different hairstyle.
Yeah, no, but you
can take my hat off, or I can shave my face, and I do that a lot. People notice, like all of a sudden, I won't have a beard.
Yeah.
So sorry, Nick, keep going on that thought. But
nope, that was it. Yeah, Melissa, I'm curious. I know your thoughts there.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it comes down to letting go of control, because I think lots of the times we will implement routines and rituals because we're having that anxiety or because we're experiencing that depression or whatever it is, and it's giving us a sense of normalness, right? It's keeping us grounded in what we're feeling. And so we've implemented those things, and it's allowing us to have that kind of control. Okay, everything else is okay. This is all this chaos and all this is happening inside my body, but everything else around me is okay. I've got control over it. I know exactly what's going to happen. I've got all these routines in place. And then we don't want to let go of the control if one of those things breaks, right?
That's called trust, right?
Yeah.
That's the delusion of trust. It's like this whole concept of, I think I have control. Mm-hmm. The reality is that our universe is designed around uncertainty. Like if you look at the uncertainty continuum, most of the time we don't know the outcomes. People still can't predict the weather perfectly. But we want to predict the outcome, and then we want to control the path that takes us there, which the path is the route, the routine, right? So when you're taking that path and you're trying to control how it goes, and then it goes off course, wow, watch people flounder.
Yeah, and I love Maureen just put this into the comments. The one with the most flexibility controls the outcome.
Yeah, Maureen,
that's incredible.
Maureen out of left field.
Yeah. Yeah,
I just that. Now my day is ruined. Maureen came in with a thought that I wasn't expecting. I got to go quick.
Yeah. Now, hey, and inside of all this too, this thought just hit me as well, is that look, you don't want to do anything outside of integrity, right? I mean, if you have an appointment, keep the appointment. You don't just show up at 12:15 because you want to be spontaneous.
Yeah.
See, I'm learning. I'm getting it. You don't just, that's, even though the great job on being spontaneous, you got to be in integrity with all these things as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So integrity is just to hold, it's how much a thing will hold together, right? The integrity of steel. If it doesn't have the integrity, it'll come apart. And so, talking about integrity, it's really just how much your word aligns with your actions.
I had inside my church, there was a leader that had talked about a reed like that grows in water. Reed,
not the guy.
not reed the guy. Reed,
Yeah.
like it's meant to bend. It doesn't break. Okay, it's meant to bend. So he related that to rules and things, because I was asking him about certain commandments and different things, and he said, as long as you don't break the rule, break the reed, but there's situations that you can bend and be flexible. And I think that the more that you can lean into that and trust without going out of integrity or character, because of different circumstances, because if it's so rigid, I don't know, you will break, or it can break, or you won't get the most or the best or the right thing at the time, maybe the right inspiration, the right lesson out of it. Or
so let's go backward to what Maureen just said about the flexibility. The person with the most flexibility wins. And notice how much trust gets in the way of flexibility. Like there's so many ways for us to create our visions in our lives, with routines, rituals, and habits. You talk about heuristics, you throw that in there. A heuristic is a mental calculation that you do basically without thinking. And so you throw that in there. There's all these things that we're designed to do, but then we lack trust. So we can't give up control. So we monitor and dictate every step and feel like we've got to put barriers in. It's almost like we put barriers in place that keep it from being what it could be. And so can we go down the rabbit hole of trust a little bit? Yeah. I mean, what comes up as you hear that? I'm going to lean on Samantha on this one. Like as you look at trust around flexibility, heuristics, habits, what comes up for you?
To me personally, a lot of it, my opinion in this is like, a lot of people have said, trust the process. And you're like, I'll say it as like my pre-self to my current self.
Yeah.
In that perspective is, I had to have like a 5-point plan with 30 notes for each point. And, what's the next step and it's like, if you get that detailed, you're going to railroad yourself. Like you said, you're putting up all these barriers. You don't have to go, okay, I'm going to eat this in the morning and then I'm going to do this and that, to get to this outcome that I want. It's like, it's never that detailed, and you're not going to know every single little aspect to get there. And like Ryan said, you have to have a flexibility. If something comes out left field and you're like, oh my God, that wasn't even on my radar. It's like, you don't want to knock yourself out of your own race, by, not say startling yourself, with life, but, that you just, as you move through different things, processes, you do have to trust that you're, like you said, on the right path as you do each, step. Trust what you're doing is right for you. And like you said, back to, integrity, you're not stepping out of that. It's just, you're finding a different pathway if something pops up, and not to say keep pushing yourself, but if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think of The Black Swan by Nassim Nicholas Taleb, and he talks about the certainty principle, and humans want certainty. And there's this thing called the certainty continuum, or the probability continuum, right? That says that things go from possible to certain. And we like to be in the space of certainty. We want to know every step. We want to know every outcome before it ever happens. And then sometimes we'll venture into probability, but rarely do people venture out into possibility, which possibility is where all the magic is. And so when we create our visions and we create our goals, we set this vision of, I'm going to create this huge thing, but I'm going to do it in the realm of probability. That means I'm going to go from certainty to probability and venture out. I'm going to venture out. Watch me. I'm going to do something I've never done. I'm going to go into probability. But the reality is, what you really want, the big thing, is impossibility. It's so far out of probability that it would take you stepping out of your path so completely that you would be uncomfortable. And most people are unwilling to be uncomfortable. Yeah. I mean, what comes up with that?
Yeah, I'll talk about that. And that, what I hear in that, and when I'm thinking about trust, is that we need to trust in the process of it happening. So we can't plan out exactly, okay, here's my goal and this is exactly how it's going to happen. This is the exact route I'm going to take. The
Yeah.
trust is in how it's going to happen. Like you can set that goal and you can set kind of your routines around this is what I'm going to do to kind of guide myself into that goal. But then with that flexibility and that trust, I'm having the flexibility to veer off somewhere when something else comes my way and a different opportunity comes in. And
Yep.
I'm trusting that that opportunity is taking me in the right space. I'm trusting that whatever comes to me is the right path to be taking, and it's going to take me to that goal, right?
Yeah.
So the
Okay.
flexibility and the trust have to be working all together in there.
So I'm going to give you a math problem in a way. Okay. I want you to give me
Oh
one.
boy.
So let's say you want to go from
I know I
wherever you
wasn't
are.
good at math.
I'll help you. Don't worry. But let's say you want to go from where you are and you want to go to New York, right?
Mhm.
I want you to name one certain way that you could go from where you are to New York. One certainty. Yeah.
One certainty, I could drive there or I could fly there.
Perfect. There's two. Perfect.
That was two.
That
Yeah.
was two. I'm a
You're a very
cheater.
good listener.
I'm an
Yeah.
overachiever.
Yes.
So now probabilities. What are some probabilities for you to get to New York?
Well, you could go down to Texas from Salt Lake. You go to Texas to back up to Minnesota, across to to Michigan and down to Florida, and then back up to New York.
But there's
On a motorcycle.
there's still a high likeliness that you're going to reach New York with that.
Mhm.
Now let's look at possibilities. Things that might not exist, right? What are some possibilities for getting to New York?
Well, I could go to Utah first and see Nick and Ryan, and then I could go to New York.
It'd be a
There you
great
go.
trip, right?
It
You
would
could be transported. You could be teleported to New York.
Mhm.
That would be a possibility. What would have to occur in your life for that to be a creation, right? Like for it to be a possibility and it doesn't exist, it's like Elon Musk going to Mars. I'm going to use that as an example.
Yeah.
Back in the day, people thought of the Martians and all this stuff, and it was this sci-fi and this fantasy world. Now we're actually putting helicopters on Mars, right? So it went from impossible to possible to probable to certain. And that's the path that we go on. And for us, when we're looking at habits, we try and stay on this path of habits that are certain things that we can count on. That's what we want. And the challenge with that is it boxes you in so small. Like I know what to expect and I want to stay within that. And I've seen people go an entire life staying within certainty, what they know. And they'll venture out into probability a little bit. But then you have people that are like, I don't even care. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go for it. And that's where you can create a new path and habits that people look at and go, that is a miracle. Like, how do you even do that? Because you're stepping so far out of certainty and probability, you're going into the world of possibility, which is still a routine. And if you really slow down with it, it can become a ritual. And with practice and time, it can become a habit. And those are the things that are going to change your life. But we want to stay in our box. Like I want to stay in the box of certainty and not venture out there.
Sounds boring.
Yeah, and there's something in there I want to pick out too. I'm glad that you mentioned looking at other people's habits and rituals and routines,
Yeah.
because I think that can become dangerous territory sometimes. Sometimes we look at Elon Musk or whoever it is, and we think, I want to know what his routines are, what his habits are, what does he do every day, right? What does he do what time does he get up in the morning, and what does he do when he gets up in the morning? Because I'm going to do the same thing. But that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to be Elon Musk and I'm going to reach what Elon Musk is doing just because I got up at 3:45 in the morning and did what he does at 3:45 in the morning, right?
Right.
And I think it's really important for us to listen to ourselves and find our own routines and rituals that are going to move us towards our goals, and not be looking at what did they do because they've reached that goal and I want to reach that too.
Yeah. I don't know if you realize how profound what you just said is, right? Is we all have this internal guidance, this intuition that we can follow. And what might be available to Elon Musk could be available to us, but it might look different. And if we're so rigid that we're going to follow his path, we're not going to see our own path.
Let me highlight that just a second. So Nick and I are very different people. We're kind of the yin and the yang, right? We're very different in our approaches,
A lot. Yeah.
a lot different.
A lot. Yeah.
But
It's uncomfortable.
It is very, it's very uncomfortable. We tell each other way too much too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But inside of that, the crazy thing is when we started our business, we went down our giant's journey, similar path, done very differently in our own personal lives.
Mm-hmm.
And look, we're right here, right next to each other, on the radio, on TV, doing the same thing at the same level. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I do things completely. I do not get up at 3:45 a.m. People. Now I will for Christmas when
You
Santa
don't get up.
comes.
You go to bed at 3:45.
I'll go to bed at the other night
Yeah.
I went to bed at it was 4:19. I posted 4:19 in the morning. I just couldn't sleep, just awake.
Yeah.
Nick gets up at 4:19 a.m. So I call it the night shift. But guess what? It's not right or wrong. It's just what works for that person.
Absolutely.
Now, some of those things some of Nick's habits could probably definitely help me.
Yeah, but you might do them, but they never become that thing where you fully feel into it to where it does become a routine or a habit, right? It's one of those things where, I can do it, but I don't love it. It's like going to work sometimes. You're just like, I'll get through, right?
Yeah. And on that note, I'm going to stop us for a moment for an ad break here. So we're going to be back in 2 minutes after this ad. All right, we've got 2 minutes there, friends.
I had to mute out because there's freaking dogs like fighting out in the hall here. It's like, what in the...
It's like, at least you muted out instead of yelling.
Yeah.
I'm on the radio.
I'll never
done that
forget
too.
that
Could
one.
you be quiet? No.
I got mad at my kids. Yeah, it's like, hey, I'm on the radio,
And it startled me.
and they're like,
startled me.
everyone
I
on
was
the
like,
show is
"Whoa,
like,
hello."
huh. Nick's
Yes,
like,
you are.
Yep.
you still are.
Yep. And we're live. Yeah.
No, that was the good thing because I was gonna pop in, but I wanted to not interrupt anybody because I'm like I love hearing this. But one of the other things you guys were saying for habits in the morning, or Ryan, like you said, going to bed, late or early, was another for habits. There's some examples, but just off the top of my head, just waking up early. It's just don't hit your snooze button. Start one little spot somewhere that you want to, like you said, Nick, you don't know where your path is going to take you, but you're just trusting that the things that you're going to be doing for yourself is the right move at that moment. So it's if you want to, start a new habit, I could probably be a little bit more productive or wake up a little bit more to do the next thing. But I'm just I like laying in bed because I don't know what I'm going to do when I get out of bed. Just hit the snooze button, pop up, and then maybe a week from then, as long as you keep doing that same habit, you start adding things to a goal list.
We've got about 30 seconds here.
Okay.
We don't want to cut you off.
Well, sorry.
We'll cut you off for the show.
Yeah,
but
I don't want to cut you off. But
Let's
we've got
touch
a
on
few
that.
seconds,
Hold
and
that.
I want you to touch on that. Yeah.
Hold that. Yeah,
Okay.
that's great
Yeah.
stuff. I love it.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got some thoughts.
Welcome back. This is episode 16 of Wake Up with Giants Radio. And today we're talking about how routines and rituals help us. I'm here in the studio with special guest co-host Samantha Callen, with Ryan the Lion and Nick the Gentle Giant. And we're moving back into our chat about routines, rituals, and habits. And I'm going to go right to Samantha because she's talking about how we can implement those routines and rituals into our lives.
So you get to
Yes.
recap what you were talking about on the break.
Recap your
break, yeah.
recap.
If I could really remember verbatim now.
Yeah.
You stared talking about small things, right? That you can
Small
do
things,
over
yeah.
time.
Yeah. So one, actually, just to kind of semi-quote Mel Robbins, she had said in a talk that I heard, you don't have to mentally overwhelm yourself as starting to think, oh, I have to, start my exercise regimen and I got to run a mile. Just run for 5 minutes, start somewhere small. And what I mentioned on break was, maybe it's, you don't know what you're doing in the morning. So you kind of lay around in bed. You're like, even to think of a list to get started on. if you are accustomed to hitting like a snooze button, start there. Something super small. You reach over, you're like, alarm off, I'm out of bed, and just start there. You
I have
do
to
not
do
have to
like a
like
scissor kick
overwhelm
out of
yourself
bed.
and be like, I gotta put 30 things on my to-do list, and if I don't knock them all off, like, oh, I'm a failure. It's like, don't do that to yourself.
You know what
There's
I
no
love
reason
is
to stress yourself out that much.
Ryan and Samantha have this way of like going into their thoughts so much that that's their world entirely. And I love you for it. And I'm also going to pull you out of it. So notice some of the habits where we go unconscious. I mean, I'm going to use this as an example because it just occurred right here. Samantha was talking and going through her vision and her thought, right? And Ryan was talking. She had no idea that Ryan was even talking.
Yeah.
Right. And this isn't a bad thing. This is just what happens in our lives is we get so into our routine and our behaviors that we are so unconscious that we're not even aware that something else is going on. And this isn't a negative thing. I want you to hear this because this is an example that when you go into an unconscious state like that, like not just you, but others, it's really hard to come out of it. And a lot of people go into their unconscious state from numbing, right? Let's say that you're really depressed and you start eating food and you go unconscious with food. And now food is that thing where you don't even know you're doing it. And then the fridge is empty and you're like, what the hell? Right. Yeah. And then, so with that, one of the things that has to occur is you've got to be able to slow down and step back into consciousness, which means going back to ritual, which means really fully being present with whatever it is that you're doing. And so that takes some practice, right? So I love that just happened.
Sometimes I just do that for entertainment value and just let them keep talking.
Yeah.
No, I want to touch on what Samantha was saying too, though. I want to go back to that because there was a few things really spoke to me there when she was talking about taking those small steps and creating a routine and really in creating a routine, trying to make that unconscious and make it a habit. And I agree with the small steps. And when she talked about hitting the alarm in the morning, and it really spoke to me because I've been in that spot before, trying to create this routine of making sure that I got up every morning to do my meditation. And at that time, I was doing my journaling every morning right after my meditation. And I got into a space of, and I was implementing one thing at a time. So I implemented the meditation and it went really well for 2 or 3 weeks. It became part of my morning routine. And then I implemented the journaling. And I got to a place where 2 different things happened. One, I hit the snooze on the alarm and I wasn't getting in enough time to do both the meditation and the journaling. And it happened several times in the same week. And I took somebody else pulling me back to say, well, why are you hitting the snooze on the alarm? Did you get to bed late? Like, did that part of the routine slip on the other end? Or does your body just really need the sleep and you need to be allowing of that right now and move back from it, right? And we got into that space of looking at what else was going on that stopped the routine from happening, right? So that's what I really want to focus on that too. When we're trying to create that routine, we need to be allowing of those things and focusing on the other things too, and not just being down on ourselves because the routine didn't work and it's not moving forward. But also of implementing a routine with such small steps, because that one that was happening with me, I moved my, and I was in an accountability group at the time. So I'm making my accountability on Sunday and I'm checking in every day with my accountability. I moved that accountability from journaling every single day in the morning after my meditation to journaling in 1, not 4 of my journals every day and not listing when it had to happen in the day. And so that opened so much more flexibility. The routine was still there. The journaling was still there. It was still happening every morning, but it didn't have to be in all 4 journals. It didn't have to be in the morning before meditation. And it was still anchoring in the celebration of doing that. It was still allowing me to have that anchoring in and have that celebration and have that feeling of having achieved the routine as I was implementing it, right?
So Samantha, I want to check in with you. I called the behavior out. And I want to just make sure that you're okay. You know, like
no, and apologies to Ryan. Didn't mean to talk over you.
I'm not.
No
Just kidding.
apology.
I'm totally okay.
But the beauty is that you really just gave us an opportunity to talk, and it's beautiful. I love it. And so I want to honor you and not have you feel like, like, yeah. But as I'm hearing this, like Melissa, what you're talking about, one of the most recent research articles that came out on gratitude was around the frequency of gratitude. How often should we do it? And they were having people do daily gratitude, and then some do really weekly mindful gratitude. And the ones that did the weekly gratitude were more grateful and more in the experience than those that were doing daily, because they shut off. They just ticked a checkbox, right?
Yeah.
And I think what you're offering, Samantha, is this opportunity that instead of ticking the checkbox, is like one small step can totally transform your life. Because if you do that one small step consciously versus, run a mile, like if I can do 5 minutes consciously, it's going to be more impactful than a mile unconscious.
Yeah. And as you do the small thing compounded over time, the effect of that is giant. It's big. It's large.
Yeah.
What else came up for you around that, Samantha?
No, I think what Ryan just said, it's like a compounding, kind of like momentum effect. It's once you've mastered something, a small change, in it, like hitting the snooze button, or not, I would say rather not hitting the snooze button. But once you just master that little thing, where before you were like, oh, this is such a task, I just want to sleep in, that you can gradually and a lot easier add in more things and bigger things. And it's not, where, like I said, in your head of, oh, I can't do that, that's too much, or that's too big of a goal, or, it's like you've kind of moved yourself up a little bit at a time that you don't even realize. And then when you look back, you're like, oh my gosh, like
it's a capacity.
Look at everything I just did, or where you are.
Have you guys ever wound? Have you ever wound anything like a clock or a toy? You like wind it?
Yeah.
And if you notice the flexibility in your hand, even the movement of that, you can only go so far, right? And when we wind a behavior and we create a behavior, we want to like have our hand twist in like 470,000 degrees, right? And get it all to the end, right at the end. But with winding, it's this process of twisting and then resetting, twisting and resetting and adding to. And same with unwinding. So when we're talking about behaviors, we're talking about incremental changes in one direction or the other. So if you have behaviors that you want to create, you're going to wind them up. And if you want to uncreate them, you're going to unwind them. And it's incremental. And that's what you're offering in both directions with what you suggested here. Don't go and just go cold turkey on eating food. Like, why not slow down and really be present with your food? Turn your eating into a ritual.
Yeah, I don't know why, but that brought up addiction for me. It's the same thing. Like, and it could be addiction to anything, not just food. It could be addiction to a drug. It could be addiction to cigarettes. It could be addiction to TV or whatever it is. That's what popped into my head. You wouldn't just quit that cold turkey. You would slowly wean yourself off of it. So why wouldn't you slowly wind yourself into a positive ritual?
Now, as a possibility, both can work. There's plenty of people that do go cold turkey and it works for them. Do what works for you. If cold turkey works, then congratulations, that's awesome.
Yeah.
If it
Man,
doesn't,
if you can do it.
Yeah, if you can do it. But to your point too, I think a lot of the lasting change, they talk about yo-yo diets. And just, and it's because you get committed to something, you do, and then you stop doing that diet and it explodes the other direction. It's like a pendulum that swings the other direction. And all of a sudden, you're like eating chips off your stomach and, in bed and you've got bags of chips. And why is chips like the bad thing? I don't understand. I love chips.
I was trying to figure out how you exercise with a yo-yo.
But those will create, like the things that you've been talking about, the small things can build up your capacity to when, somebody says, hey, do you want a bag of chips? No, I don't want a bag of chips, but I'll have a handful or I'll have a few and I'm good.
Yeah.
And it builds up your capacity and your ability to have some self-control, some discipline, those kinds of
I
things.
want to hit on that because you just brought up, now it's about willpower, right?
Yeah.
So willpower is a limited resource. You think about your brain, it has the ability to generate enough electricity to power a small light bulb.
Mine's a really small light bulb.
It is a small light bulb, but 100-watt
Night light.
a light. But here's the thing: is their energy is exerted in the brain. Now, when you add willpower in and you're resisting something, like I'm going to be strong and I'm going to resist this, you only have so much energy that you can put toward that, and you're going to run out. And in most cases, people fail when it comes to willpower. You look at the marshmallow test where kids couldn't resist. Most of them couldn't resist. And then they touted it as this thing of, wow, the kids that are really strong in their willpower turned out better in life, right? But the reality is a lot of those kids that didn't have the willpower may have found other solutions to work through it to where it didn't require willpower. It required, like what you're talking about, Samantha, small and incremental improvements in their lives. Now, I can see the value of willpower, but to use it as a resource for like changing a behavior makes it really hard for most people.
Yeah, because I think we move into the thought of, oh, I can do anything for 3 weeks. 3 weeks, that's all you want me to do. I can do anything. I've got the willpower to do that for 3 weeks, and then it's over in 3 weeks. I'm good.
Yeah.
Right.
And what if it takes 280 days on average to build a new habit?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can only go 3 weeks. Well, that's going to be really hard with willpower.
Yeah. Or for something to manifest, we had a guest on our Wake Up with Giants TV show, Janae Thompson, who talked about it took 10 years for her to, being disciplined and working and mastering different things and building good habits and routines and to finally reach a point where the fruit started to bear, in a way that she was hoping.
I love what Diana just pulled up about giving grace to the relapse in a way, right? Like that is vital because likely you're going to go back to some old unconscious behaviors and you're not even going to know it. But when you become aware, give grace to the experience, because what most people do is they'll shame themselves for going back to the old routine, which just propagates them going further down the line. So they make it worse rather than just saying, of course I stepped off. Why wouldn't I step off? That's part of the process. And then re-engage, because you're not going backward, you're starting from just where you stepped off, right?
Yeah. Well, I was saying to touch really quickly on that is just of like a confidence builder, because I mean, once you've gotten to a point that maybe you didn't think you could have gotten to, sorry, I'm going to be doing that all day.
You're good.
That it's maybe, a lot of people have like a self-confidence issue too. I mean, I've been there. I probably will always be there in a way. But it's nice to be able to build a self-confidence and say, okay, well, I got to this point. Like Diane said, something happened. And, that's okay. Like Nikki just said, it's like, you're going to have bad days. You're going to have like that reset moment. You at least have proven to yourself, you're like, hey, there's evidence. Like I did get there. I can get back up, just keep going, get there again, surpass it, keep moving. You have, it's an ebb and flow. I mean, you're not always going to keep making progress every single, something's going to come up and that's okay. It's that confidence to step back into it. And keep doing, like, you said, Melissa, your habit or your ritual to it, you just keep re-implementing it.
I'm going to talk about my favorite F word again. I'm going to bring it up. I'm going to talk about Mandelbrot fractals, by the way, for the radio listener. But in the Mandelbrot equation, he takes a number and he squares it, and then he adds a number to it, and it comes out with an outcome. And it's a simple equation, but when repeated, it creates complexity. And in this equation, in the negative, if you were to add a negative number to it, the negative number can only go back -1 or 0. It can't go -10 or 100. It always comes back to -1 or 0. And when we look at our behaviors, if we have a fallback, generally it'll be equal to where we left off or a little bit worse than where we left off if we'll leave it alone. But we have this tendency to want to go back to nil, like nothing, like non-existence. Like if it were the earth, like you have grass and then you have the earth and then you have nothingness, right? People think, well, if I fail, I'm going to go into the nothingness. Well, you can't get rid of the dirt. The worst you're going to get is in the dirt. and which is a foundation for you to launch from to continue growing, if that makes sense. So it's you can only fall back so far, but if you'll take these small steps and repeat them, you're going to create this complexity in your life because you're adding to the last day's behaviors, as long as you just don't give up. Because if you give up, then yes, the answer is nil. It's all gone.
Diane or Fiona had said just in the comments about looking back on how far you've come. I posted inside of the Tribe of Giants on Facebook some of our old episodes of Wake Up with Giants TV when we first started. And you know what? Like, I look back and I've lost a lot of weight. I've gotten better in my presentation. And it's yeah. And you know what's funny about that is some days I still stumble over words, and I love it. I am still me, right? There's still some things that are being improved upon. But I look back at the beginning and I'm reading off to the side. I'm reading, "Hey, welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV." It's very clunky. Yeah. And now that doesn't happen quite the same. Now, there are some clunky moments. Trust us. There's some really clunky moments. But we can laugh it off. We've had technical issues this morning on our show. We had kids just, they just photobombed the episode, and it was perfect. It was just what we needed. And we can flow with those things. We can look back and give ourselves some grace for the, hey, wow, I was bad. but look where I came. Look where I'm now. Yeah. And maybe in a year I'll look back and go, man, I was bad at this point. And that's okay. But it gives us perspective on, hey, we have come a certain way, and we're continuing to grow.
Storytime. Yeah, I do the same thing with Storytime Yoga. I look back and I go, oh, wow. I'm like adjusting the camera because you can't see my whole body. I'm like, what am I doing? What is going on there? But it's nice to see the progression. Yeah. Yeah,
you like, we talk in the book, the giants and the smalls, about there's a small and there's a giant. The difference is time and experience, in going down a path, and the giant worked on himself in certain areas, went down his own path. And the small hasn't gone down those yet. And over time, that small becomes a giant. But over another period of time, that giant looks small to another giant. So maybe he's small, and then he raises up to a higher level, in his own journey. And so it's just this continuous talking about fractals. It's repeated over time. A small is a giant, and a giant is a small.
Yeah, it's all within the same individual, right? It's all within the capacity of that measurement. I love what Hugh just said here. If you can pull that back up.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that was beautiful, because he said routine is physical, ritual is spiritual. And if we were to shift that word just a bit, is experiential.
Feeling.
Right? It's the interpretation, because the physical, you have your sensations, right? The routine is the sensation and the pattern and the path. But the experience is relative. Like, two people could have a similar routine and path, but have completely different experiences. And that's where the spiritual comes in. It could be deemed or perceived as spiritual. It could be perceived as just an enjoyable thing. It could be all kinds of things, but it's experiential. That's my take on it. Yeah. Yeah.
And I love that we went there too, because I had seen this quote before, and forgive me, I don't know who said it. It was just somebody who was writing an article. And it said, the structure of routine comforts us, because that's why we put it there. The structure of routine comforts us, and the specialness of ritual vitalizes us.
Wow.
That's what they said. And I thought it was pretty profound, because that's what we're looking for most times when we're implementing routine. We're just looking for that comfort. We're looking for that control, really, over things, right? But I loved that they said.
Yeah.
Sorry. I love that they said the specialness of ritual vitalizes us. Okay. Because we're moving into that energy when we have that ritual. We're moving into that energy of it and the mindfulness of it. So I really, that spoke to me, that quote.
Wow.
Go ahead, Nick.
No, I want to tie into it, because I think of the dog on the nail, right, on the porch, and the dog is whimpering. And it's so uncomfortable. And somebody asked the farmer, why isn't he moving? He says it's not uncomfortable enough yet, right? And so there's these experiences, behaviors that we have. We're comfortable in uncomfortable things. And then we get there and we suffer, but we're unwilling to step into the uncertainty because we know what to expect with that discomfort. And the specialness that you talk about is found when you can step out of that into the uncertainty again. Isn't it surprising that the uncertainty is where the joy is? The uncertainty, because when you come through the other side and you have that experience, notice how much joy comes out of something you thought you couldn't do. Like jumping out of a plane or, bungee jumping or riding a roller coaster, and you're like, I don't know if I can do it. And then you do it and you come out the other side and you're like, oh my God, that was amazing. Right?
Oh yeah. Me all the time. I'm like, no, I can't get on that. No, there's just no way. And then you finally do it. And that was incredible.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's what I tell my kids about eating certain foods. Just try it. Maybe you liked it, and then you regret not trying it all these years.
You're going to love Lucky Charms.
They don't listen.
You don't need to resist those. They're good. Yeah.
We had an epic fail with that last night, Ryan. We had
Lucky Charms or food?
With food, not Lucky Charms.
Oh.
We had what are they called? They're collard greens. We had collard greens last night for the first time.
Yeah.
Well,
Did you tell
everybody
them
tried them.
Like, try it, you'll love them. And they tried them and no.
Yeah, no. Mommy ate them, but nobody else ate them. It was an epic fail.
Hey, you know what? But then you could try something a little different.
Yes, we can. We will try them differently next time.
Like collard yellows or collard blues. Yeah. Yeah. Any other thoughts around this? Is beautiful because I see when it comes to routine habits and rituals, it's in the creation of them and it's in the extinguishing of them, right? And it's useful in both directions. And it really just depends on what's useful for each of us. So
yeah, and I love that you said that. And what came to my mind right away was like some of our habits aren't useful habits. Some of our habits we do unconsciously and they're not useful.
Yeah.
So wake up, everyone.
Wake up with giants.
Yep. Wake up and take notice.
Well, and take ownership. Here's another thing, as we come toward the close here, is how often do we get to play the martyr or the victim? And it means that we get to stay unconscious. Like if we can put it out there on something or someone else, then we don't have to address it. And I've done that in my life where I have created a habit of being the martyr. And it's like I'm suffering and it's that thing's fault and I don't have control over that thing. So I get to stay in this and there's nothing I can do. But the truth is that my lack of boundaries around my choices created that very outcome. And until I take ownership of that, nothing can be done over there. And so I get to stay in the story and justify it in this habit and this routine of being the victim. And the beauty of it is once you become conscious, and that's our whole mission here is wake people up, is when you become conscious, you start to realize how much of your own stuff you're creating in your world.
That's very true. Yeah.
Which can be scary and why some people just probably choose not to be conscious of it.
Well, if it's your problem, it's not mine. But the truth is most of my stuff in my world is my problem.
Wow.
I don't know. I've been known to say, not my circus, not my monkey sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Yes. And how easy is it to own that story and allow that to be a truth?
Yeah.
And the reality is if you said, well, I'm going to own that monkey and I'm going to own the circus as much as I can. Now, there are some cases where people do that really isn't your monkey or your circus, right? And just recognizing the boundary between what's yours and what's somebody else's. And that's very powerful. It's empowering. It can be really hard too.
Yes.
Absolutely. So before we sign off here, does anybody have any final thoughts?
I'm grateful for Samantha for joining us today because your wisdom and inspiration and your words and the experiences that you've had in your life has all brought this to the table right now. And I know that it's helped a bunch of our listeners and viewers. And so thank you for joining us on Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day. We appreciate you being here and being the most amazing person that you are, because you are conscious of what's going on in your world. And I know that so many other great things are yet to come, and maybe we'll look forward to seeing you again in the future and helping us out.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you guys for having me and everyone here listening.
Did you have some
Awesome.
final thoughts, Samantha?
No, I just wanted to tell people, whoever's listening needs to hear it, just keep going. Like you guys have all said, now the worst thing you can do is give up. I mean, there's a lot of low points people can have before they have that wake up moment, have that, that call to action within themselves. And I think that that's probably one of the biggest takeaways that I've ever had like personal experience with is no matter how bad you think it is, just that minute change, that the smallest, shift could make all the difference. So just keep going, keep pushing yourself, out of comfort zones, and, just keep trying.
That was beautiful.
Yeah.
That was. Thank you so much, Samantha. And thank you, Nick and Ryan, for being here with us today. We are going to sign off on the radio station. Please do join us next week when we talk about something that's near and dear to Nick's heart, how to make decisions using salmonic action. That's what's up for next week. All right. Please do go and check out our YouTube channel, like and subscribe. If you're not there yet, Wake Up with Giants TV, and we will see you all or listen to you all next week.
Love you too.
So yeah.
So we've just got a minute there while our extra plays.
Oh, okay.
Hi, social media. We love you.
We love you.
Our tribe. Wake
Samantha,
up.
I hope you'll do this again. I hope I didn't chase you off.
No, I'm glad
so nervous about that, right? Like,
yeah, well, we've got
so,
Samantha locked in for 2 weeks from now.
yeah. Well, do we?
No,
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, you can't go anywhere. We got you now.
She's not going anywhere.
No, I'm glad you said, like I said, I will be watching this over again because I just kept in my head, I'm like, what did I say on break? And then I just was like trying to play out like the monologue. And so when Ryan was talking, I'm like, I was even trying to look at faces, so I didn't like do that. I'm like, oh my God, I still do.
It's hard not to, right? And then that's why I wrote it down, what you were talking about, because I've learned over time too, as we're doing these shows, I would do that, or Nick would do that, and we would lose track. So as the other person's talking, I write just bullet points of where we were, what we were talking about, because it also brings up, other good thoughts along the way that might be able to serve, the tribe or the listeners as we're going. So you did great.
The beauty is, Ryan, I know you have ADHD, right? Sometimes. I'm going to just disclose it, everybody knows now. But the beauty of it is that you really have this ability to hyper focus on something, right? Yeah. But also be distracted. And I think it's amazing. Like, it's helpful for not only you, but others to see, wow, where am I doing that in my life? Right? Where am I going completely unconscious and not hearing people because I have this perception? Mm-hmm. And so, yeah. Thank you, Steve. It's good to see you. Loving you too.
Love you, buddy.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah. It's, I'm so glad it came up. Like, honestly, it's beautiful. And the thoughts around the small steps, because it really is like, although it feels like Groundhog Day, there's a spiral up, right? Mm-hmm. Yes. An expansion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely can feel like that. That's why I said it, just, that, I don't know what you want to call it, like the wake up moment, epiphany, however you want to say it, is, just that small, like no matter how small, of a shift, it's like that can be what is needed for like a life-changing moment. It's just kind of crazy and neat and, beautiful to think about.
I'm having a thought around this. Imagine breathing, but you never breathed out. How would that go for you? Right? Like, you breathe in, you think about life. That's how we want to run life. No contraction. We just want expansion and no contraction. And imagine if you were to breathe in life and never breathe out. How would that go for you?
Not well.
You'd explode, right? Mm-hmm. And so that contraction actually helps consolidate things. And so as we go through life, we're going to have expansion and we're going to bring it back. And then we're going to have expansion and bring it back. And so it's beauty.
Also the experiencing the fear and the courage and the positive and the negative.
It's like breathing, right?
Yeah.
I love that, Ryan, that you brought that in. It's like you feel fear and love. Well, it's like you feel love some days, and then you breathe out and you feel fear, and then you breathe in and you feel love again, right? And it's like breathing. It's like, it's beautiful, but we don't want the fear. I don't want to feel sad, but then how would you feel joy if you didn't feel sad? It's like, it's okay. Stop breathing.
That movie. I love that you just said that. How would you feel joy if you didn't feel sad? What's that movie?
Inside Out.
Inside Out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Inside
You guys
Out,
had the same thought. I love that.
Right? Inside Out. Exactly. Because that was the moral of the story at the end. And sadness kept hitting the memories, the joyful memories. And Joy was so upset that she was in her mind tainting these joyful memories and taking the joy away from Riley, who was their person, right? They're inside Riley's brain.
Yeah, yeah.
And at the end of the movie, it really like, how could she have joy without the sadness in that memory?
Disney's so good.
Aren't they? I just love that movie. It was absolutely incredible. The way they talked about and described the emotions and how all of the emotions needed to be there. It was incredible. Yeah, but that's what that brought to me too. I love that you said that, Nick.
At some point, somebody's going to say, you know, inside the Giants and the Smalls, the Disney and the Pixar movie.
They are.
It's happening.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
And we won't be talking about that other show Inside Out.
No, that other one.
I still would. Be like, I love that movie. I love it. I don't love it as much as the Giants and the Smalls, but
it's a good one. It's all right.
Yeah.
I'll watch it, right?
Yeah, I'll watch it. Sure. I'll spend 2 hours of my life there, but I'd much rather be over at the Giants and the Smalls movie, you know?
Yeah.
No, but the beauty of all of this is that in either direction, we have habits that we release and habits that we create. And it's like a breathing in and breathing out. And you definitely are going to have both, right? It's not all about expansion. It's about expansion, contraction, but we try and grow more than we shrink. That's kind of the goal of life.
When we got done talking about it was 1:11 when you got done talking about the movie, by the way.
Nice.
Nice. I love that you connected the two, Nick, because we would never, you're right, we would never stop breathing in or stop breathing out. And when you connect the two like that, it makes you think, well, why am I stopping that? If I wouldn't stop breathing in and breathing out, why am I stopping that? What's stopping me?
Yeah. Wow.
Right?
Yeah. It's like, I'm going to drink alcohol so I don't have to feel my breath. Right. So I don't have to feel, when I breathe out, I get so scared. I need to drink alcohol and become an addict so that I don't have to feel that out breath. And in life, and I want to be cautious of this a little bit, but it's that's what we do. We don't want to feel the out breath. And so we numb, and then that numbing becomes an addiction. And so really sit with the out breath, right? The out breath is just as important as the in breath. The sadness is just as much important as the joy, right? The grief is as great as the greatness, right? Yeah, perfect.
Absolutely.
I think I've emptied my brain for a moment.
I was just going to ask if there was any final thoughts before we say goodbye to our social media friends.
That was perfect. It's exactly how it needed to be done.
And I will thank Samantha for being here as our special guest co-host again. And happy Mother's Day to every mom out there. Wishing you all a wonderful, happy day.
Hi, Mom. Love you too.